Committee of the Whole meeting this afternoon for Wednesday, April 19th. The time is now 3:43 p.m. I apologize for the delay in starting. It's all on me. So thank you, councilors, for being here. Thank you for the public and our speakers. At this time, councilors, you received a copy of the minutes of our last meeting of February 15th. I would like to ask for a motion and a second, if you all are in agreement with the minutes as written. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. At this time, we do have we actually have three presentations, and then we have a work session for item number 4. But first, I would like to call from our agenda Jefferson County Department of Health, the Medical Director, Darlene Traffenstedt. Hope I said it right. And she is going to give us an update on the fentanyl, problem that we're having within the county and throughout the United States. Thank you so much. I must state at first to say that she is a fellow member of the class, Birmingham Leadership Class of 2023, which we all feel is the best class. So thank you very much.
That's right. Thank you. I believe the slides are up on the screen. I want to say, first of all, to members of the City Council, thank you so much for having me today. I am accompanied by the Jefferson County Health Officer, Dr. Mark Wilson, Jefferson County Deputy Health Officer, Dr. David Hicks, and Chief Deputy Coroner of Jefferson County, Bill Yates. And so we're happy to entertain any questions you all have at the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
We're here today to talk about the acute and worsening public health threat of fentanyl overdose. And I'm going to present to you some data today at the national, state, and most of all, the local level. Next slide, please. So the slide that you see on the screen at this time is going to be the trend of overdoses in the United States. For the most recent 12-month period, overdoses killed more than 100,000 U.S. citizens. What you'll see on the far right hand of the slide is the increase that we've seen since the onset of the COVID pandemic. Next slide. The Alabama trend is the same. For the most recent 12-month period, more than 1,400 Alabamians have lost their lives to overdose. And here in Jefferson County, we're feeling a more significant burden than the rest of our state, which we'll see on the next slide. So since 2019, we have had a 90% increase in overdose deaths. We've gone from 236 in 2019 to 448 for 2022. During that time, our fentanyl overdose deaths have increased by 275%, going from 95 in 2019 to 356 in 2022. Next slide, please. And really what we see in terms of overdose death numbers that get publicly reported is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the burden that overdoses are having on our community. The data that you will see on the screen is going to be emergency room visits for overdose. And there's 3 years of data there, but what I want to point out is March of 2020, right as the pandemic was starting, our county only saw 118 emergency room visits for overdose. And in March of 2023, that number is 244. So you can imagine that doubling the number of overdoses that are hitting our already stretched emergency departments is definitely having an impact on the entire healthcare system. The map that you see on the right side of this slide is 4 years of emergency department data and reflects where the most overdoses are coming from geographically in our county. The darker colors that you see on the slide would represent a higher number of overdoses. Next slide, please. This slide is similarly looking at calls to 911 or EMS runs for overdose. And you'll see that in March of 2020, we had 168 calls here in the county for overdose, and that number has doubled nearly to 322 in March of 2023. So again, just kind of given a landscape of how this is impacting the whole system. Next slide, please. This is a gradient heat map of our EMS runs for overdose at the county level. And the main point that I want to make, there is no municipality in our county that has not been impacted by this. This reflects 2022 data. When you see shading, that's where overdoses have occurred. Drilling down to the city of Birmingham in the next slide, you will see that there is also no neighborhood inside the city of Birmingham that has not been impacted by this. This issue is crossing all socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, gender, and age barriers. Next slide, please. So why did this happen, or why has it suddenly become so much worse? And the answer is that our drug supply fundamentally changed when the pandemic happened here. So before the pandemic, we had issues with heroin overdoses, and those had actually gotten slightly better. But illicitly manufactured fentanyl entered our drug supply early on in the pandemic, and that is the major cause of what we're seeing with the increase in overdoses. I did not point this out on the slide for Jefferson County, but we do have other substances that have entered our drug supply here. One of those is a drug called xylazine. That drug is only approved for use in animals. It is a horse tranquilizer, and it is being mixed into our drug supply here and was associated with 44 deaths in the year 2022. So the ultimate cause of this is that the pharmacology of the drugs that are available for purchase has significantly changed. Next slide, please. And this is a CDC slide that just really represents that. Illicitly manufactured fentanyl hit other parts of the country before it hit Birmingham. And so if you look on this slide at the year of the last increase, that's where really we saw it hit in Birmingham. The other increases that you see are going to be the prescription opioid crisis that we had, followed by the heroin crisis that we had. Next slide, please. So you all may be familiar with fentanyl, but if anyone is not, fentanyl is actually a prescription medication that is used to induce anesthesia or to maintain anesthesia or to treat very severe end-of-life pain. What has happened is that this is not diverted prescription fentanyl that is harming our citizens. This is illicitly manufactured fentanyl with the chemical components typically coming in from China to Mexico, and then the manufacturing process occurring in Mexico, and then those drugs flowing into the United States through the southwest border. We, at this time, are still seeing some heroin deaths, and most of the fentanyl that we are seeing is mixed in with another substance. So it is a mixed cocaine fentanyl death, a mixed methamphetamine fentanyl death, or a mixed heroin and fentanyl death. Fentanyl is significantly more potent than heroin or morphine, and easy to make, cheap to make, and they can produce it in large volumes. So if you can imagine when you're selling heroin or cocaine or marijuana, you have to have land, you have to grow a plant, you have to process a plant, you have to process it into a product that can be used by a substance user, and then you have to traffic it. With this, the process is much quicker for them and much cheaper and much easier. And so that's how they're able to get this drug into our communities. Next slide, please. This is just representation of the strength of fentanyl compared to other substances. So essentially, I'll sum it up by saying that a fatal dose of fentanyl is around 2 milligrams, which is about the size of a sesame seed or a few grains of table salt. So it takes very little fentanyl to cause a death. Next slide, please. I would be remiss if I did not mention the impact this is having on our youth here in Alabama and in Jefferson County. So I wanted to show you, these are some stories from around our state. The first one about a 15-year-old in Mobile County, one about an 18-year-old in Auburn, another one about a 16-year-old death in Selma. And what we're seeing in our youth specifically is that they are getting a hold of counterfeit pills that are contaminated with fentanyl. So these pills are flowing in at high rates into our community and can be purchased for about $5 a piece on social media platforms, and can even be delivered to the home of the teenager. Not only are teens being affected by the counterfeit pills, but they're also being affected by marijuana or THC-based products, such as edibles, that have also been contaminated with fentanyl. We have a hard time convincing people that there is a possibility that marijuana-based products could be contaminated by fentanyl, but this is just one case from our area based in Leeds of a criminal charge that's been brought up against someone for fentanyl-contaminated marijuana. Next slide, please. This is a CDC slide. This was published by the CDC in December looking at overdoses in 10 to 19-year-olds. And you'll see that that curve that occurs in 2020 and 2021, the upward curve that you see, this is national data. So just to give you some local data, in 2019, we had 13 individuals in Jefferson County between the ages of 11 and 19 that sought care for overdose in one of our emergency departments. That number rose to 114 teenagers that sought care for overdose in the year 2021, and in 2022 that number was 110. So we've gone from 13 teenagers that have overdosed in our area to 110 in a matter of 3 years. Next slide, please. A reminder that fentanyl can come in all forms. So it can come in powder, pills, nasal sprays, eyedroppers. And these are just some images of the counterfeit pills that are flowing into our community and other communities. So they have gotten very savvy at making these pills to look exactly like prescription medications, and really to the naked eye are indistinguishable. So in 2022, the DEA seized 58 million of these pills. So that's the ones that they caught, not the ones that actually made it into people's hands, and 13,400 pounds of powder. And already in 2023, the DEA has seized over 16 million of these pills that look just like prescription medications. And for the person who is taking them, they are not aware that they're getting a fentanyl-contaminated pill. Next slide, please. This is a DEA campaign called One Pill Can Kill, and I think this is really helpful for parents to check this campaign. So that is a very high percentage of these pills that could be fatal to our citizens. Next slide, please. So when we think about this, I work for the Jefferson County Department of Health, and I lead our overdose prevention and response activities there. And when we think about this, it seems very daunting to think about how we can help people. And so we subscribe to harm reduction principles. And harm reduction is essentially recognizing that there is drug use in our community and trying to minimize the harm that comes from that drug use. So it's really trying to reduce the spread of infections and to reduce the risk of death from substance use. The National Harm Reduction Coalition has 8 principles that really define harm reduction, but I want to just point out a few. This accepts, for better or worse, that licit and illicit drug use is part of our world and chooses to work to minimize its harmful effects rather than ignore or condemn them. Next slide, please. And I'll skip one more slide. And then finally, it recognizes that the realities of poverty, class, racism, social isolation, past trauma, sex-based discrimination, and other social inequalities affect both people's vulnerability to and capacity for effectively dealing with drug-related harm. And nothing that we do is condoning illegal activity. It's just simply trying to keep people alive and keep them healthy until they are at a point where they can access our treatment and recovery system. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that we really have 2 harm reduction tools that we provide to the general public. And one of those is fentanyl test strips. That law became effective in Alabama in June of last year, and in September of last year we launched our fentanyl test strip distribution program. I'll keep this very simple by saying that this is basically a strip that uses technology similar to a home COVID test or a pregnancy test. They come in packages that look like this. They cost about $1 a piece. And it is used for a person to test the substance for the presence of fentanyl before they use it. Individuals can obtain free fentanyl test strips from the JCDH website, and we provide with this, we provide instructions on safe use, and we provide 5 strips for each request. Next slide, please. So this just goes through the information on how the law came through. We'll skip over that for now for time's sake. So fentanyl test strips are now legal in 15 states, and we were one of 8 states to pass the legislation last year. Texas currently has a piece of legislation going through. So I just want to give a shout out to Alabama for taking a real proactive approach to fentanyl overdose deaths by passing this legislation here in the state. Next slide, please. So the second harm reduction tool that we provide to the general public is a drug called Narcan. And we provide kits that look very much like this one that I'm holding. And each one of these kits contain 2 doses of a nasal spray that can reverse an opioid overdose. And this is really where we want the general public to become more aware. We want us to all begin to think of this just as we think about bystander CPR or an automated external defibrillator. So if you would be willing to grab an AED off the wall and help someone who may be suffering a cardiac arrest, I would ask you to please be willing to help someone who may be suffering from an opioid overdose with Narcan. The way that it works, when fentanyl or any other opioid causes an overdose, it actually suppresses the breathing center in the brain, and the person's breathing slows down until it comes to a stop, and the heart stops following the breathing stopping. And the way that this medicine works, the receptors in the brain that the fentanyl or other opioid are sitting on, they actually like this medicine better than they like the drug. And so when you get this medicine on board through the nasal cavity, it goes up to the brain and it knocks that opioid off the receptor and allows that person to breathe again. And it really is, a very low-cost public health intervention. Next slide, please. This is what our kits look like. I would say that some people worry about liability with the use of Narcan, and we do have a Good Samaritan law in Alabama that protects from criminal and civil liability should you use Narcan to assist someone you believe is suffering from an overdose. Next slide, please. This is our training site. Anyone in the state of Alabama, through partnership with the Alabama Department of Public Health and the Alabama Department of Mental Health, can go to our website and get either one or both of these tools for free. So our website is www.jcdh.org, and the training link is on the home page. And so it is available in English and Spanish. Next slide, please. Next slide. I do want to say that we have tried really hard at the health department to make sure that we're putting our resources in the places that have been most impacted by overdose. So you'll see 2 maps on your screen today. The top map is where 2022 trainees that received our resources were located, and you'll see we've covered the county pretty well. And then in the lower map, you'll see the state of Alabama and where we're providing these resources to individuals that live outside of our county. Next slide, please. So this is how our Narcan distribution has grown in response to the pandemic and the increase that we're seeing in fentanyl overdoses. But we still need more help. We still need to do more. And we hope this number just continues to grow. I will say that this medication has been deemed to be safe for over-the-counter use and will launch as an over-the-counter drug in the late summer of 2023. So soon, whereas now our state law requires a physician or pharmacist or a nurse employed by the county health department to dispense this medication, soon it will be available more broadly. Next slide, please. So where do we need your help? A lot of places. We have found that those that are in a position of influence in their community are the best messengers for these resources, much more effective than us saying these things. And so really we would love to partner with all of you on pop-up substance use resource fairs in your districts. We've done these in Inslee. We've done one here at Lynn Park in partnership with Addiction Prevention Coalition and the Recovery Resource Center. So the goal of that is to bring any type of resource that someone with substance use may need, including Narcan and fentanyl test strips, out into the community. And we would love to partner with you all to do that in your district. All of you have many spheres of influence, and so if you're in a position to connect us to a neighborhood association, a church, a Greek organization, alumni group, really we need to get out into the community and have these conversations and connect people to resources, and you all can help us do that. Social media, we had Mayor Woodfin sent out a tweet in December, and our normal monthly requests for Narcan in response to that tweet quadrupled in that 1 month. So that one tweet, which also he put it on his Instagram and put it in his Instagram bio, the link to get our training, but one tweet had a significant impact on the community. And so we would be happy to provide you information to share on your social media to help us get the word out. We know that there's some opioid settlement funds flowing down. The State Opioid Council has issued recommendations for spend of opioid settlement funds, and I could provide those recommendations if needed. And August the 31st of 2023 is International Overdose Awareness Day. And in the past, City Hall has gone purple for us, which is the color to recognize that. But we would love the opportunity to partner with multiple city agencies or city leaders to do a citywide International Overdose Awareness Day event this year. And lastly, I just want to say that our work in this space has strengthened our partnerships with Birmingham Police Department, Birmingham City Schools, and the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District, and we've been able to partner with all three of those agencies to do trainings for both their staff and their clients or residents. And I just wanted to say a special thank you to all of our partners who work in this space with us and allow us to serve them and their clients. Next slide. And this is the QR code to access our training. It'll take you directly to the training site. So if there are members of the audience today that would like to get a Narcan kit or fentanyl test strips, they can do so via this QR code. Next slide. And that's all I have today. I would just be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you so much. I am so glad that we had the opportunity to hear this information and get this update from you. I'm sure that we have questions from counselors. So counselors, I'll give you an opportunity. Dr. O'Quinn.
Yes, so I actually got a Narcan kit at the Magic City Classic. I don't think it was last year. I think it was the year before that. So I was wondering about expiration and storage. So, can I leave it in my car in, Alabama summer, and for how long?
Thank you for asking both of those questions. They're very important. The shelf life of the kits that we are sending out now is about 2.5 years. So we have some that expire in May of 25 and some that expire in August of 25. But 2.5 years is the approximate shelf life of Narcan that's being manufactured now. No, you cannot leave your kit in the car in the Alabama summer. While Narcan will tolerate cold temperatures very well, it will deactivate at 104 degrees. And so we know our cars get hotter than that here. So please do not leave it in the car. If you need it and you've left it in over 104 degrees, it will not work when you need it.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Quinn. Any other questions or comments? Madam Pro Tem.
Thank you for coming here today. When we heard Senator Britt talk a few weeks ago, she mentioned this and how this is something she's really trying to push, honestly, on the national level, addressing this with our kids. Because by the time you find out, oh, I'm overdosing, you're dead. Mm-hmm. And so I think openly talking about it is the best way to spread awareness and really to help our kids. But I really have a request. We have Titusville Day this summer. Yes. It's 4th of July though, but I think that's a great opportunity for you all to have a pop-up vendor, because we are having vendors be able to reach 3 neighborhoods and everybody. So I would like that request for you guys to come down.
We would love to. We were there last year and it was our first year to be there and we had a great day, so we would love to come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Madam Chair, Mrs. Abbott.
Almost anything. I wanted to know if this Narcan, does it work for all drugs that people ingest for fun? Like it'll clear everything?
It will not, unfortunately. It only works on opioids. So that would be heroin, fentanyl, prescription pain medicines like Percocet, Lortab, morphine, medicines in that family of drugs. So even the xylazine that I mentioned earlier, the horse tranquilizer medicine, it does not work on xylazine. It does not work, on benzos like Xanax. So only opioids. But right now, opioids are involved in 80% or more of our overdose deaths. And so I tell people when we're training them, if you see someone down And no matter what you think they took, if they have the signs and symptoms of an opioid overdose, please try the Narcan, because there's an 80% chance that even if they weren't trying to get an opioid, that they may have gotten fentanyl.
And I guess if they've had a heart attack instead of a drug overdose, it just won't do anything.
That's absolutely right. It will not help them nor hurt them for any other condition. So there's really no harm in giving it a try.
Okay, well, that was another part of the question was, will this stuff hurt a person in any way, or does it just fix the problem? And
The only way that I hate to use the word hurt because it saved their lives, but if you have someone that's a chronic opioid user, when you give them Narcan, it is going to knock all of the opioids off the receptors, and they're going to go into acute withdrawal. So if you have someone that has used opioids long term, they're going to wake up feeling really bad when they go into acute withdrawal from the Narcan. But at the end of the day, you've saved their life. But we do tell people if you're giving Narcan to someone who you know to be a chronic opioid user, to give them a little space as they wake up, because they're usually quite distressed.
Okay, well, I don't know any drug users knowingly, and so if I were to help someone, it would be purely by accident, that they were lying beside the road, and, so, like after they wake up, what do you do with them?
Yeah, so the first step in the process is to call 911, and mainly to get paramedics to come and help take over from the bystander, the person, the Good Samaritan that's been willing to help. But also because sometimes 2 doses of Narcan is not enough. So we're seeing some overdoses require higher doses of Narcan to fully wake the person up. And lastly, I always want to say this, the half-life of Narcan is short compared to the half-life of opioids. So it's really important if somebody has to take Narcan that they go on to a higher level of care like the emergency room, so that when that Narcan wears off, if there's still opioids circulating around in their bloodstream, that we avoid a secondary overdose.
Do they have to be cooperative in that advice? I mean, can they say, no, I'm not going?
They can refuse, yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you, Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting and a little disturbing too, or unfortunate, whatever you want to call it. I've had a technical question for you. Throughout Narcan being around, I hear different statistics on whether you give Narcan first or you start CPR first. In your professional opinion, what is appropriate?
Yes, so you're going to assess the person for a pulse and for respiration. So obviously, I hope that there will be more than one person available, but if you're by yourself, you're going to want to, if they have no pulse, you're going to want to start chest compressions. So if you've got 2 people there, you could do one person doing CPR, one person administering Narcan, or you could quickly, in between rounds of CPR, administer Narcan. But the most important thing is to get 911 on the way so that somebody will come in to help you if you're by yourself with a victim.
Do you know what percentage you can do regular Narcan and that they still have a pulse by any chance? And CPR is not required?
So
it's a random question. I can Google it.
So are you asking when their breathing has changed versus when they've lost a pulse? Is that window of time? I don't have statistics for that, but I would say that Narcan's going to be most effective in that window. When there's been a change in the breathing pattern and a change in the level of responsiveness, but before they've lost their pulse. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much again. I do appreciate, and I know the councilors appreciate this information. I do want to take everyone's and ask you all to look at this information about opportunities for partnership. As Councilor Pro Tem has already indicated, I think we all have some great opportunities that we could bring this to our communities, neighborhood association meetings. We have some neighborhood presidents here that would also maybe willing to allow you to come in and speak. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
All right, councilors, we'll turn our attention to our next agenda item, and we have an update by Attorney Lawson about Avenue. Good afternoon, Attorney Lawson.
Hi, Yolanda Lawson, Department of Finance. Councilors, if you will, today I would like to provide you with a first quarter update as we committed to with the previous presentation. Some of this will just be an update on information you already have. So as we flip through the contents, just gives you the introduction. We talked about the contract again, just reminding you the terms of our agreement. And so we move into the issues. The newest issue that we have is the City of Birmingham Administrative Tax Law Application and Interpretation. So currently what's working well is taxpayers may apply for a business license to operate within the city, and of course we know that those applications will come to the city if it's a new business. And from 2019 through December 2022, Avenue did allow businesses to virtually open, renew, and make payments on tax liability accounts. What's not working well is Avenue allowed the businesses basically to go through their own thought processes without any direction and choose the type of schedule that they determine would fit their business. So we have some businesses within our system now that are not properly licensed. And we're discovering that as we come across maybe delinquencies, or we come across issues with those accounts, or perhaps if a vendor or a business is trying to utilize their license and the license coding is not correct, that may be brought to their attention for whatever purpose that they're utilizing that business for. And that probably could have been eliminated if there were more in-depth questions asked. Maybe similar to if a person comes to the front counter or to the cashier's window, there are a series of questions that our team members ask the taxpayers to determine the proper scheduling of their business. So we are in the process of trying to correctly license businesses that have been improperly done so. The next is going to be a new issue is business license requirements. Prior to January 2023, taxpayers were able to open tax accounts and pay tax liabilities online with Avenue, and since then, taxpayers can still pay ongoing tax liabilities. However, they are not able to open their account initially without going through the City of Birmingham in some form or fashion. So what's not working well with that, if a taxpayer incurs a tax liability, that liability creates a nexus within the city. But now what we're discovering is there are some accounts that were opened and are ongoing with the City of Birmingham that only have tax liability accounts that do not include a business license. So when a business has any operations within the city, it creates what's called nexus. That nexus then triggers the need for a business license within the City of Birmingham. But we're now discovering that there are some accounts that were opened with Avenue prior to January 2023 that did not purchase a business license. So we're discovering those through our whichever processes we may come across them. We have requested a report from Avenue of all the businesses within the City of Birmingham, but of course we have not received it. Business license schedule shopping. This is a new issue. So if a business has already been licensed in the City of Birmingham, they're able to renew their license online. But that also gives them the authority or the ability to go in and change their schedules. And when they change their schedules, they can then choose a schedule that may or may not fit their business. So they may opt for a cheaper schedule, they may opt for a schedule that will allow them to pay lower taxes, or they may just inadvertently choose the wrong schedule and they may overpay for their taxes. Again, we're discovering that if something arises with the account or the taxpayer contacts us because they have some questions. Tax remittance requirement frequency. This is also a new issue. Taxpayers are able to register their accounts and pay the applicable taxes on occasion. But what happens is different taxes for the City of Birmingham have different payment frequency requirements. So business licenses are traditionally due annually, and there are some alcohol and liquor taxes that are due annually and monthly. Now, taxpayers are able to go in and pay those based on the tax frequency that was set up by the City of Birmingham, or in this case, our third-party vendor. Some of those accounts are set up with the classification of O. That was a classification that was created and implemented by Avenue, and it is not a classification that is approved by the City Council for the City of Birmingham. And the O stands for occasional. So occasional taxpayers or tax filers, there's no prompting of any system to notify the taxpayer that their tax payments are late or delinquent or not paid at all because of the occasional status. So that's for the business license. For any other taxes, such as occupational, sales, lease, seller's use, consumer use taxes, occupational, sales, and lease taxes are due monthly on average. But a taxpayer has to complete a list of things before they can be converted to quarterly. But if those are classified as O because a taxpayer does not consistently pay those, then occasional filer, no notification is going to the taxpayer as necessary. With consumer use taxes or seller's use taxes, those are traditionally paid quarterly. Again, a lot of those are classified as O because the taxpayer may or may not have remitted one payment over the last 2.5 years. Transfer correction of payments. So this is a new issue as well. So if we discover that a payment has been improperly applied to the account or to an incorrect account, and we notify Avenue that those payments either need to be moved from one license type to another, that payment goes away for the City of Birmingham to see it. We can no longer see those payments. So we have to rely on any documentation that we house within the City of Birmingham to know that that has happened. And the same thing, if it's transferred from one account to another, then the payment goes away completely for the City of Birmingham. We can no longer see it. Only Avenue can see the payments for their system that they have, that we do not have access to. Designated Avenue contact for taxpayer and city. This is an ongoing concern. We do have a designated number and email address. However, the ongoing problem is we are still being placed on hold. We still have long wait times, or if they do answer the phone, we have long periods of time before they will respond to us and provide us with the information. If a taxpayer contacts Avenue with a question about their account, they're often told to contact the City of Birmingham to discuss the account, and then the City of Birmingham has to then notify the taxpayer, we cannot provide you the answer that you're seeking without contacting Avenue, and then we either have to place the caller on hold and hope the Avenue answers the phone, or we have to contact the taxpayer back. And it just becomes a circle for the taxpayer. That was a repeat slide, so my apologies to the City Council. So the next page, general license verification holds. This is an ongoing concern. In November of 2022, most of the licenses are coming to us. We still have the same problems of occasionally the licenses are released by Avenue to the taxpayer. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Some of my pages are missing.
Oh, sorry. Do you need another copy, Council? Okay. City of Birmingham full access to the Avenue system. This is an ongoing concern, again, because of the issues that I've mentioned earlier and us not having full access to the system. A lot of the things that are occurring, we're not able to completely assist the taxpayers. We're not able to correct. We're not able to instantly provide that feedback that our taxpayers are looking for. And that just continues on the next page. New business license renewals. That's an ongoing concern. Of course, the taxpayer is supposed to come to City Hall to purchase a new business license now. and they may renew their business licenses online, but they continue to be able to purchase new business licenses online through Avenue, and this should not be allowed. Avenue updated the city. They are working on this with their development team. However, the fix has not happened. Avenue billing invoices. So what is happening is Avenue now has to bill the city of Birmingham for their services. But the services that are being billed, we're not able to verify the amounts that are being billed. So since February of 2023, when the billing was implemented, we have not remitted a payment to Avenue because they have not remitted us sufficient information to support the billing, and we're not able to verify the bills. And that's all I have today.
Thank you. I'm just trying to take it in. Councilors do have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I do just want to start off from our February Committee of the Whole meeting. Our minutes do reflect. So we're in this contract until 2024.
September of 2024.
And I know at that time you outlined several things that were going to be changed, which you're reflecting here, what works best and what doesn't.
Yes, ma'am.
I just kind of wanted to give it in context for everybody. Who wants to start first? I think they're all the way down the line. Start. Councilor Williams.
So, given that this is seems to be failing, is it the administration's plan to stick with Avenue?
Madam President, so that's something that we cannot discuss openly. I think if we go into that territory, we have to go into executive session.
I agree. Can we just hold that and then we could determine? I know we need to talk about it. Thank you, Councilor Quinn.
So, I'm not getting an appreciation for significant improvement from your last report to this report. That's my general impression. Would you say that's accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions, councilors?
Locked away somewhere where we can't get at it. What are we going to do? Whose idea was Avenue? I mean, where did this outfit? I see them advertised all the time like they're competent. Is that how we got sucked in? We saw an advertisement? I mean, this is just really, really upsetting because these are our revenues.
Councilor, would you want to address that question, Chief?
So, yes. So the recommendation came from our previous finance director, and a part of the drill down from Attorney Lawson was when we started getting these concerns from citizens and employees. The goal was to drill down to see, one, where there were areas for cure, two, how should the city move forward. So this is a very transparent, obvious presentation for the council and the administration. So at the outset, the recommendation was a very solid one. However, what we've done is try to track down what we've been hearing and then determine next steps. And there are a couple of next steps, but obviously those discussions would need to be had with the council, as Chief Mitchell said, so that we are fair to both the current vendor and prospects for the future. But the drill down was meant to be very honest and transparent. That's why you're getting it the way you're getting it.
Councilor Williams.
So do we not have a termination clause in the contract for convenience or 90 days?
We would strongly recommend, before we have any further discussion along those lines, Councilor, that we have that in executive session.
Okay. And I guess we can't ask, what is the financial impact of this? When your first slide when we talk about, I just wrote a question to myself just to ask, even with the application for the licenses and how you have to go back and look, can we put a dollar figure on what this is, the city is losing in this? Not only money, but time, data, and information, time that's spent with staff, and overall the way that our businesses feel about us as the city of Birmingham. I believe, Darlene, we were present in our class where we talked about businesses in the city of Birmingham and their partnerships with us, and the one prevailing theme that we found is that businesses, their problems they have with the city of Birmingham when it comes to when they apply for a business license. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm not gonna get us all upset, but this is unacceptable. So do we need to go, this is just committee of the whole. We could come back later and have a more in-depth discussion by going into executive session. But I see we have our attorney out there. I'm not sure if this is the time or if we're going to come back to a council meeting and have that executive session.
Madam President, I think you have to allow us time to really dig deep into, because I know this was a lot of information that was shared, and I know a lot of points were made that this could affect the revenues that are coming into the city. I would like to say, I know we're trying to nail down every last concern with Avenue to give them ample time to fix those concerns. But we do have adequate staff in-house that is still collecting our revenues on a daily basis just to make sure that we offset anything that Avenue may or may not collect. So I don't want that notice to go out there we're not collecting revenue appropriately. So, Madam President, just give us time to brief the mayor, and then we'll come back and inform the council of our next steps.
Dr. Quinn.
Yeah, so recently, as part of our allocating our surplus, we approved, I believe it was $15 million to do an overhaul of our enterprise system. Yes, correct. Thank you. And will, that type of systems overhaul allow us to return these types of functions in-house?
Council, to your question, yes. That the ERP system that we're currently trying to implement will have a system in place where we can collect our own business license tax.
Okay, thank you.
Council Williams.
Then my next question is, how quickly is that system slated to be implemented?
So, Councilor, we're right now very early in the planning stage where we're kind of convening all the stakeholders within other departments that will use this ERP system. So basically what we presented to you guys when we talked about when we need the ERP system, we want to make sure that all the modules, all the permitting, all the business license are all inclusive of what we're trying to go out when we send it out for bid to see if we get some type of software that is adaptable to what we need for the city of Birmingham. So it's not just put an RFP out there and take the first person. We need to make sure that we're checking all of the boxes for what we need and not piecemealing a program because we asked the council for a substantial amount of money. We want to make sure that we put good use to what the money that you allocated to us.
I.e. years. Years.
I wouldn't say years, but.
So that 15.
Say years.
So the $15 million was estimate then?
Yes, a ERP system is not cheap.
It was an estimate. Because if we hadn't sent it out to RFP and we don't know what the components of the software is yet, then voted on it. So that was not.
When do you feel you will have that information for us so that we can have the right information to look at all the variables and make some type of assessment to move forward?
Give us a moment to get with the finance department and the ERP team that we're still trying to assemble. We have a project manager that is assisting us with the ERP system. We'll get a report to you as soon as we can.
I guess the only thing I would like to ask, we're going into the budget preparation. I did not watch from the finance department had their session with asking the mayor and stating what funding they needed. But my concern is we go into the budget, we have a line item in the budget, and now we find that the 15 million is not enough because this needs to be solved.
So the 15 million was coming out of ARPA.
I know that, but I'm saying, what about the general fund, the FY24 budget? That's what I'm concerned about, that you may need additional funds from it if the 15 million isn't enough.
We're confident that the 15 million is enough.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I mean, if the software's for sale for 10.
Yes, Mrs. Abbott.
So do we have any kind of controls over anything these people do? I mean, they made up a category of their own, occasional, and do we have any kind of control at all, or are we just at their mercy?
Well, Councilor Abbott, I do want to assure the council and the administration that the Tax and License Division has gone back to the bare basics of managing the tax accounts to the best of our access and ability. So if we incur or if we are faced with a situation, then we are prompted to try to correct as many taxpayers that may have been impacted by that era as possible. Some of the delay is in us receiving the reports to know what we're working with and which taxpayers may have been impacted by these mistakes. So, for instance, with the occasional filers, I'm currently awaiting a report now from Avenue that will specify which taxpayers have an occupational tax account. And with that occupational tax account, which tax frequency has been assigned to them. Once that report has been received, then we have the ability to go in and manually change those taxpayers to the correct account. To the correct filing frequency. So I want to assure the council that if something is discovered that should not be happening, we are taking every step possible to correct that just by the bare, minimum education and operations that we know to be true and correct by ordinances that the council has approved and that the Code of Alabama allows.
Madam President,
Chief
Councilor Abbott, to Attorney Lawson's point, yes. The short answer is yes, we absolutely do. So I want to make sure, as we prepare to have this discussion with you all, two things. One, it's been made abundantly clear to Avenue what our expectations are and where we stand as a city. The mayor's done that. Our leadership team has done that. A part of what you're hearing from Attorney Lawson and the Finance Department is as we walk out the next steps that we have as a city, which we will share with you all, it's also meant to ensure that they are meeting or at least they're attempting to meet our expectations as we walk out of the options. So we recognize all of the options that we have as a city, and they're all on the table. It's not a discussion that we would want to have in this forum. That's something we're going to be sharing with you all. But I don't want the council left assuming that they're just moving without any consequences, because that's not the case. We absolutely do have accountability is at the forefront of how they're moving, and they're very well aware of that.
Councilor O'Quinn?
Sorry, more questions. Probably there will be, the more we continue to ask questions, the more questions there will be. But anyway, do you have any appreciation for, in terms of revenue, what side we're on, whether we're in the black or in the red? So what I'm asking is there any appreciation for whether we are potentially owed money, or if taxpayers have actually overpaid, in which case, we would be liable for paying them back for overpayment?
Unfortunately, there's no way to make that determination, and I would just hate to give you a blanket assumption. I just would not want to do that.
I guess, currently those determinations would have to be made on an individual basis and really brought forward by the individual business, whether they suspect that they're probably not going to come to us if they think that they've underpaid. Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
No, Council O'Quinn actually noted what I was going to say. I mean, we have revenue examiners that go out and make sure if employees or businesses overpay when it comes to sales tax, business license tax. Those items actually appear before the council when we have an overpayment situation on a particular business. So we are internally reconciling those things on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes.
Oh, I think another councilor.
Do you have something to say, follow-up, or Councilor Williams?
I'll wait till Councilor Williams.
Go ahead, Councilor.
One thing that has been a topic has been short-term rentals, VRBOs, Airbnbs, and one thing that we were told is that Avenue, we were going to be able to use their compliance monitoring for the payment of Airbnbs, VRBOs, and other short-term. Where are we with that?
We have also contracted with Granicus to provide us with those services. So I'm not aware. It may have been something that we did not fully execute with Avenue because I'm not aware of them providing that service, but we do have a contract with Granicus to provide those services.
So when a owner of a VRBO or Airbnb or whatever service wants to operate in the city of Birmingham, they're to register a business license with Avenue and then go to Granicus and register something else?
Well, with Granicus, they are able to register their business with Granicus.
Okay.
So we're in the process of honing in on the application process with them, so they can just remit the taxes directly to the city of Birmingham. And then the taxpayer would not be burdened with having to register with multiple organizations. And that was part of the concern, burdening the taxpayer with multiple sources. So Granicus is able to allow them to register as well as collect and remit the taxes to the city of Birmingham as our third-party vendor.
Can I get the history on where we are with Granicus and our short-term rental properties, please, for the last 3 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the additional information that you'll be giving us and more discussions on this, definitely. Thank you, Attorney Lawson.
Madam President?
Yes, Ms. Zabby.
So we're going to wait to have our meeting behind closed doors until the administration figures out what to do?
Well, what I'd like to do is that, can you be prepared? How long is it going to take us to give this information? Because we need the discussion and really need to set forth some parameters. And we could do that during council meeting on Tuesday and call for a special session at that time. Or I'm trying to get some idea if we can call it now. Would that be worthwhile? But I know councilors do have more questions and information that they'd like to obtain. That may have to come through the this type of setting for a special.
Yeah, Madam President, I just think allow us time to get all the information that's adequate before the council, because there's only certain things we can say publicly as we're talking about this particular business.
Councilors, if you allow me to have that conversation with the mayor and then get that time together for us and get your feedback as well. I think it needs to be, we need the discussion as soon as possible, not to wait on just the information, because there are more questions and there will be things that we may want to ask as part of information we would like to get from administration regarding this.
Yes, ma'am. We understand. We'll make sure we go back and the mayor will guide, but we understand the urgency, so we'll work with that in mind.
No, I'm just saying, like, I thought that's what the point of this was today, because didn't we already hear about it? Anyway.
Well, yes, this is their update, and so they've left us with this information. And so what I'm getting is that we're going to get more information to follow. This is the update for us, and this is where we are, and this is what we're going to have to garner from them through executive session on what our next steps would be. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting close to the 5-year mark, and we had it for 3 years, and then we extended for 2 years to revamp it. And yeah, okay, I'm just going to quit talking, but we need to get to the bottom of this and do something because it is quite frightening. We're in a predicament.
Thank you. Thank you all. Our next presentation is from Attorney King, and it's about the DNAT or DNAT program. And I guess as they come forward, I know Attorney Lawson is left, but are we sure if other cities use this system? I just had that one question. Any cities within our area that also utilize the system?
Yes, but I don't know a lot of.
Vestavia Hills does it.
Okay.
They figured out how to get it together.
Thank you. All right. Attorney King, hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. And for the public, my name is Nicole King, and I serve as the city attorney. And with me, I have my team. I have investigator Salira Perkins. And as you all know, Mr. Lawrence Cooper retired, so Mayor Woodfin appointed Joseph Abrams as the chief assistant for the litigation division. So if we can get our first slide up. So this is a recap to let you all have an update on what DNAT is doing. And as you all know, DNAT stands for the Drug Nuisance Abatement Team. And our number one goal is to hold property owners accountable while also enhancing the quality of life for our residents. And of course, you all know this, that we do this in partnership with the Birmingham Police Department, neighborhood associations, and other entities. And next slide. I want to brief you all on some statistics, some updated statistics. Right now, we have received more than 400 reports of drug and public nuisance incidents regarding properties. Of those complaints, 93 locations have executed search warrants. And we have filed 17 lawsuits so far in Jefferson County Circuit Court. And we have handled cases in all 9 of your districts successfully. We have obtained fines in excess over $49,000 that have gone toward the city's neighborhood revitalization fund. And we have identified at least 700 properties in environmental court for adjudication. We have presented to the Alabama State Bar Association and the League of Municipalities, and other municipalities we're happy to report in Alabama are asking what the city of Birmingham is doing with DNAT and has asked us to conduct training sessions to help them in their municipalities. I will now have Investigator Perkins. I know some of you all have met her, but I would like for her to provide to you all in detail what her role is.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salira Perkins. I serve as the investigator for the City Attorney's Office. I have been with the city for 5 years, and in this new role, I have actively been involved in seeking out and gathering information for dilapidated properties and properties that have been deemed a drug or a public nuisance. I work very closely with the City of Birmingham's Police Department, Fire and Rescue, and our other departments to go out and code enforcement, to go out and see what's going on in the neighborhoods. Our citizens have called in, they've emailed us complaints, and so one of my primary role is to vet those claims and to determine if there is any validity, and then we go forth with preparing for prosecution of those cases.
And so I won't take up too much of your time, so I'll just show you some examples of before pictures with drug nuisance problem properties and drugs seized on the next slide, and weapons seized as well as money. We go to the next slide, we can see the improvements made after our abatement proceedings. And I will now have Chief Assistant Joseph Abrams come up and tell you a little bit about the public nuisance side and where we are.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Once again, my name is Joseph Abrams, and I have the good fortune of serving the city of Birmingham as the Chief assistant city attorney in the litigation division. That's still a mouthful for me to say. Haven't quite figured out how to get it out as quickly. But my role in the drug nuisance abatement team is primarily centered around our public nuisance component. So there's two components to the team. We have a drug nuisance abatement team, and we have a public nuisance portion as well. So with the public nuisance portion, we are specifically targeting properties that are having an adverse impact on the surrounding community's use and enjoyment of their property. So what that means in very practical purposes, we are targeting properties where the homeowners are often, we see, out of state and allowing their properties to fall into squalor and disuse, where there's excessive accumulation of trash, excessive accumulation of broken down vehicles, and more recently we've been focused on situations where there have been shootings and homicides in properties. So that's something that we find to be particularly important. This work is impact litigation, where we are actually having a meaningful impact from neighborhood to neighborhood within the city of Birmingham. So if we can go to the next slide, I think 7. I think this is a perfect illustration of the effectiveness of our team. This was a situation dealing with the Blue House, and this Blue House was occupied by gang members. These gang members lived in an established neighborhood, not dissimilar from many of our communities, where there were retirees, working class folk, people that just wanted to enjoy their property, but these gang members decided to engage in shootouts in the middle of the day. And as you can see from the third oval on the left, you can really see how one property that's allowed to remain in misuse or remain without oversight can have such an adverse impact on the surrounding communities. So when you look at the numbers, I think there's a lot of context that are missing from numbers, because that's one house and you can see literally the bullet shell casings go down the entire block. So that's what we're abating with this team. This is the critically important work that we're actually doing, and we are actually seeing real life impact on people's communities, because your house where you live is such a springboard to other things that happen in your life. So this is something that City Attorney King has been doing an amazing job with, and we are passionate about being more aggressive in this impact litigation that has such a profound impact on our city and our community. So thank you for affording me this opportunity to speak, and I'll pass it back to City Attorney King.
Madam President.
Yes, Ms. Abbott.
I just wanted to ask one question.
Yes.
And that is the property nuisances. Does there have to be illegal activity going on in the dilapidated, crumbling, rotten homes that are left in the middle of our neighborhoods, or can they just be crumbling, rotten, owned by people who don't give a hoot?
That's correct, Councilor Abbott. On the property nuisance side, it does not have to be illicit, illegal activity. That is correct.
Okay, that's good. That's good, because I have a house in my district. I'm getting ready to turn it in. It has been a problem the entire time I've been on the council, and you know how long I've been here, and nobody's done, as far as I can tell, anything. And so this is going to be the poster child for my district. It's actually in my own neighborhood, and probably half the people in the neighborhood know it's there because it has been rotting in place. And it's been turned in so many times we can't even count them, and it's just like the person must be golden.
Well, we would definitely look into it.
I want them to turn ungolden.
We would
like
definitely look into it.
Lump of coal.
Thank
you. Thank you.
And so I want to move on to the next slide, and our last and final slide. So you heard from Jefferson County today, and this is in line with what DNAT is all about, and we have some good news to present to you all. A component of DNAT is opioid usage, and you all have signed on to allow us to retain outside counsel, and we've done so, and we have prevailed in a settlement. If you'll recall, December 29th of 2021, the council approved for us to obtain outside counsel to represent the city in pursuing litigation to hold certain pharmaceutical companies accountable for misconduct related to opioid distribution and addiction. And so I informed you all in 2022 that there was a settlement, that negotiations were being entered into with the state of Alabama and local municipalities. And so I'm pleased to announce today that as a result of the settlement, the city of Birmingham has received $1,288,762.75 that will be coming to the city of Birmingham. A resolution will be forthcoming for you all to accept those funds, and we do anticipate more settlement funds coming into the city's coffers within this year. If you all recall, I believe it was either last month or the previous month, you also approved for us to enter into settlement negotiations with CVS and other entities. So we are still in litigation. That litigation is still pending. So I can't go into too much detail, but I can tell you, based on the money that has now been entered into the city's coffers, the $1.2 million, there are some strategies that involve abatement strategies, and there are specified approved uses. And so I won't go into too much detail right now. I will provide you all a copy of the court's exhibit. It's an Exhibit A and Exhibit B that gives you detail of what these funds can be used for, but I will just outlay for you all briefly some of those strategies. And so the first strategy has been for opioid community innovation and recovery, and that involves treatment, early intervention and crisis support, support for criminal justice involved persons, that may involve pre-arrest diversion or deflection strategies to provide services to individuals that have opioid addictions. The second is family-centered treatment support and recovery support, and that involves strategies for opioid statewide innovation and recovery, which can include prevention, prevention of overprescribing of opioids and other drugs of potential misuse, overdose prevention and harm reduction, services for children, first responders, and that involves, as you heard Jefferson County mentioning about Narcan, things of that nature, training public safety officials and first responders on safe handling practices and precautions when dealing with fentanyl and other drugs, and training and education. And the third strategy is for sustainability, and that's used for funds to promote evidence-informed treatment and recovery. And lastly, to provide resources to fund oversight, management, and evaluation of these certain abatement programs. Now, when you get to the Exhibit B, I won't go into full detail, but it has similar strategies. Also expanded were pregnant and postpartum women, expanding treatment for neonatal abstinence syndrome, certain expansions of warm handoff programs and recovery services. So you all will see that in full detail. But I wanted to tell you that there are specified approved uses for these funds. So we're happy to report that, and that's all we have today.
Thank you very much. I know we have some questions. I do want to ask you, for the members of the public that are watching, I know this was an update. Can you give us that number? You have a website where they can
Thank you.
Report this?
Yes, you can call our office, 205-254-2369, or you can report and send emails to problemproperty@birminghamal.gov. Again, we do keep this information confidential. We will not expose identity of citizens who report information to us.
Thank you so much. I believe we have some questions from councilors. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. So first of all, Nicole, great job. This is awesome, as always. Is this your entire DNAT team?
It is not.
So how many?
So right now we have 5 attorneys, and we are expanding, and we have support staff as well as our wonderful investigator.
Okay, so it looks like that the 700 properties that have been identified in environmental court for adjudication, those have not yet gone to you guys, correct?
No.
What do you need staffing-wise or monetarily-wise to do that?
We are working with the police department to get more officers to help us with service issues. So
Like
that
ICE? What were you talking about?
Yes.
Serving warrants?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And so has that been an issue? It looked like you had 93 warrants that, and I don't know over what period of time, but you had 400 properties, 93 warrants. Is that because of staffing, or is that because we couldn't get the information necessary to do a warrant on the other 300 properties?
It's been twofold. I mean, we have to recall we were in the midst of COVID at a certain point, and so a lot of those cases were upheld, but we have had issues with issuing subpoenas and proper service, and so we do need help in that realm, and the mayor and the police department are aware and are working with us.
So out of that $1.2 million settlement and the other pending settlements, which we hope they don't come through Avenue to get to the city of Birmingham. Are those allowed to be used for DNAT, that settlement funding?
There can be a certain portion which involves training. We have certain training components that are necessary in how we're bringing these cases, and with the usage of officers, we're looking into that.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. O'Quinn?
Yes. Excuse me. Is it necessary to execute a warrant in these cases versus a summons? Because it's my understanding, and I'm not an attorney, obviously, that for a warrant you have to have a law enforcement officer to serve that, but with a summons you can have potentially a city staff person.
So with with the warrants, we're talking more about our drug nuisance activity. With the summons, we still need a law enforcement sworn officer to do that. That has been an issue. And I will note, and I have said this before, but I want to note that with the property cases, they do not move as fast sometimes, like the drug nuisance cases, because the law provides that we can bring a hearing within 14 days with the drug nuisance cases. With the property cases, we had some issues with COVID, and some of those cases have been backlogged for some time, but the court is now aggressively moving forward. But I do want to let you all know that still has been a problem with getting some of you all's regular property nuisance cases heard before Jefferson County Circuit Court.
Okay. Is it conceivable that, I'm very concerned about our staffing issues in BPD, and they have, more demands than they can handle already. Is it conceivable that we could contract potentially with the sheriff's office or some other, law enforcement entity to, perform service?
We are exploring all options, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Attorney King. We appreciate the update. Counselors, at this time, we have our next item on our agenda, and it is our working session that we will have regarding some changes that have been requested to the Citizens Participation Plan. The session is going to be led, and we'll have Deputy Director of Community Development Alice Williams to lead us in the discussion. Mr. Coleman, we were going to ask you and your team to come to the table up here so that we could be a little closer to you, so that we could work through with the questions as we go through the items. So you're all invited up. The door might be locked. Yes, ma'am. And as Mr. Coleman comes up, Mr. Coleman, I know you had indicated there would be you'd have 4 individuals or 4 speakers with you. Thank you, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce everyone. But before we start, just for the members of the public, this is a working session. This is not a public hearing or a public meeting. This will be dialogue and discussion between the members of the council and the selected members of the CAB, led by Mrs. Williams, and of course we'll have opportunities for flow of discussion. Ms. Williams, if you'll just, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Alice Williams, and I serve as Deputy Director of Community Resource Services. And I just wanted to give you a little history of this request to meet with the City Council. Prior to the pandemic, the CAB began meeting to discuss potential changes to the CP plan in accordance to the 2013 revised version of that plan. So they started meeting prior to the pandemic, looking at issues and concerns that were a part of the plan, because as part of the CAB, it is their duty to make amendments to that plan. So this has been a long and arduous process, and they've had a great team, and they pulled together and they've looked over some potential changes. Those changes were submitted to the council in November of 22 this past year, and as a result of those changes, the committee members here present are Mr. President Coleman, Vice President Harden, Secretary Reynolds, and committee members, Mr. Debro and Ms. Littleton. And Mr. Debro is going to go over those highlighted changes with the committee, and that's primarily it. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. Debro.
Thank you so much for this time for us.
You're going to have to.
Many months, even during COVID, I will tell you that
Mr. Debro, I'm sorry, they can't hear you. LB, can you, I believe that mic is moved. You can move it a little closer to him. Okay. Hold up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Debro.
Okay, I'm sorry. And we have also looked at the history of our citizen participation plan and wanted to update it where it would be effective in our current operations. I will say in the history of the citizen participation plan, we found that really Birmingham provided some leadership, some forward leadership in developing the plan back in 1975, not only for Birmingham, but even for the nation. That it was an ideal plan to really involve all of the citizens of Birmingham through the design of the 99 neighborhoods. Over a period of time, we discovered that really I think the effectiveness of this plan was depleted, either through not following the regulations, changing some of the regulations, changing some of the plans without coming before the CAB. And we have used this time to try to develop a plan that we could follow and that we could have, in particular, the hearings, the public hearings that are needed and required by HUD before some of the CDBG and other plans are presented to HUD. We discovered a couple of years ago, I guess, that a citizen participation plan was submitted with the application that the CAB knew nothing of, was not, had not approved, and where we did not go to HUD to complain. We bringing it to you for a clear understanding that applications should not be submitted according to HUD without the proper citizen participation plan that has been approved by the citizens and the CAB. We think we have a wonderful plan here in Birmingham, and we just want to try to follow the guidance of this plan. On the back of the first page, we show the citizen participation plan as it was first designed back in 1974, where there would be 99 neighborhoods where every citizen in Birmingham could be involved and could be a part of this plan. That would roll into the 23 communities and where we have the Community Advisory Committee. This advisory committee is really made up of the elected officers of the neighborhood. And then from there, we get the 23 members, presidents of each community up in the Citizens Advisory Board. And then we go directly to the city, whether that's the city council, the mayor's office, community development, or the Citizens Resource Office. We have on those first few pages no major changes. On page 6, I think it's noted that we have added this part: if an officer is elected or appointed to a local, state, or federal office, she gives up her position as a neighborhood officer. A City of Birmingham employee may not serve as a neighborhood officer nor as a representative to the neighborhood association, for example, NUSA. Any neighborhood officer elected to represent the city shall be funded from the mayor or city council's discretionary funds for travel and related expenses to carry out his or her duties from funds other than the person's neighborhood association. Let me explain to you why we have listed this, and this has come really from our past experience. We had a person who was employed by the city as in the city resource office, who really was on the board, elected to the board of NUSA. It was discovered that the person was not a citizen of Birmingham, but lived in the suburbs. And then once the administration of the city changed, that person was no longer hired and no longer available to be on the NUSA board, which diminished our say-so and our space on the NUSA board. So we think it's only right and fitting that a member of the neighborhood association all the way up to the CAB would be our representatives to any national or regional boards. So that's really the background for that note. The second one is that as representatives are elected, we think that there should be some type of discretionary fund or some fund that those persons who are representing us will be paid from. Right now, it's at the will of the neighborhood association to support that person who is really representing us as a total in Birmingham. And so we don't think it should be left up to the discretion of the neighborhood. We've had some situations like that this past year where the neighborhood chose not to use that funds to send the representative to the meetings, which negated our representation in several situations. But if there was a discretionary travel fund to be used for the representatives who are representing all of us, rather than going to the neighborhood, we are proposing that. That's on page 6. If you have any discussions of that, I would certainly entertain any questions at this point before I go to the next
That's what I was
point.
going to ask, if it would probably be best if we go through each one of the items and then we could get the questions, or we could get that. So, councilors, let me stop. We have the 2 items that have been before presented to us, mainly on page 6 under, we're looking at, again, neighborhood associations. And with that first item, it was declaring who is eligible to serve.
Eligible to serve,
and go with that.
representing us on a national board or national organization.
Any questions regarding the rationale of that, councilors, as we consider this?
Just for some clarity, so this highlighted portion is saying that should anyone go to NUSA outside of a valid member of a neighborhood association, then that all it's saying is that expense needs to be picked up by City Hall.
Yeah, repeat that.
So if any person outside of a member of a neighborhood association attends NUSA, then that expense would be picked up by City Hall. What are you trying to get to?
There are two different things. I'm sorry. The first one is talking about representation to the NUSA board or to any board on behalf of the neighborhoods associations, that person would be a part of the neighborhood association or the CAB.
And not a city employee.
Not an employee of the city.
Okay.
Yes. In the past, city employees could go to NUSA and would go to NUSA, and they had the ability to apply for board membership or an officer, but we don't see them as representative of the neighborhood.
I gotcha. Okay.
And so we are saying that you would have to be a part of the neighborhood, a citizen of Birmingham, first of all,
sure.
Before you can represent us to NUSA or any boards. That's the first part. The second part is that if a citizen is elected to the board, that there would be some type of travel set aside for that person to represent the city of Birmingham. Right now, they had to depend on the resources of the neighborhood. And we have had some cases where the neighborhood did not have the funds to send their representative, or the neighborhood refused to utilize any of their funds to send their representative, which meant then we were not represented as a city of Birmingham. So we are saying that if there's a discretionary fund really devised either through the city council or the city or whatever to be used to represent us as a city. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so how many trips are there that are outside of that like what are we talking about?
It depends on the board meeting, and I don't know. It's probably
three.
Okay. 3 a year. And
that's if you're on the NUSA board.
Yes, on the NUSA board.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm with you now.
Right.
Sorry.
We have 2 representatives right now.
Okay.
And they have really had to pay out of pocket, which we think is unfair, especially since they are representing us as citizens of Birmingham.
Okay, I'm with you.
Any other questions, Councilor Pro Tem?
Let me ask this. How many people are interested in serving on the board? Or how many people have served on the national board in the past?
We've had 2 slots, and we really lost one of our slots because of that city employee who was ineligible to really be on the board, and so we lost that slot for a while. We had to work to regain that slot, so we really have 2 slots that we're trying to maintain on that board to have a voice.
Let me ask y'all this. So how it works for us at the end of the year, okay. It's just an idea. A lot of neighborhoods have a lot of money. We're talking about like 40, 50, 60,000, 80,000. Why can't there be a pot of money from the neighborhoods, especially that have excessive amounts of money, and do it that way? Because I don't understand how we can do this and you're not a city employee, because that's how our employees go, because they're a city employee.
Well, the money that's allotted to the neighborhood is allotted to that neighborhood, and they really have discretion over that neighborhood money. And I will say that there have just been a lot of complications in using those neighborhood funds. That's something else we probably need to have another discussion another time, that really neighborhoods have had projects to utilize those funds over a period of time, but because of legal ramifications, processes, changes in administration and all. It keeps getting delayed, and so the money has not been used. We hope that we can move to a process where there's an ease in really getting projects from the neighborhoods pushed through where they can utilize those funds. I don't think that the neighborhood funds, though, would be an option for representation for the whole CAB, all of the citizens. We are requesting that there would be a line item to support those persons rather than them having to spend out of their pocket or having to depend on the goodwill of their neighbors.
Let me ask you this. So there are 3 of us on the national board. We don't take from their discretionary funding. We use our own.
You use your own.
We use our own, which means
discretionary funds that you have.
Yes.
And the neighborhoods don't have.
But you're not listening to me. You're not. So we have to do extra travel, but we don't take from Council Williams, the other councilors' money. And so I'm trying to see the rationale between this request, and can we even legally do this if they're not employed?
Because if I could just piggyback on what Council Pro Tem is asking, as elected officials, we have to complete a statement of economic interest each year. And this is where we declare and state things about our finances and how we utilize monies. And in this case, if now you're talking about dispensing discretionary funds, that puts you into a quasi-elected official capacity, which you're not really meeting all of the requirements that we have as elected officials. So I would like to go back and ask, when you have each of your neighborhoods have your funds, do you allocate those funds, or do you have line items for those funds outside of any events that you may have? Is anything designated for training and development? Is anything designated for weed abatement? Is anything designated? I know you do have some monies you set aside for printing and copying, but could you utilize that, and that would make your money a little bit more effective, or allow you to utilize that money in a better way, or in a different way? I won't say better.
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to answer the question. That's not an impossibility.
Okay.
The problem is when it comes to what's legal or what we have to go through just to get that money allocated, that own process. Most times think it's a simple, gonna go on through.
So do you think the problem really is y'all can't get the money fast enough? Do you think it would help you more if we just modified this process? So let me say this. I don't mind giving money to neighborhoods. That's not it. It's just, would you, never mind. I don't have a problem with giving the neighbors.
I may have used the wrong term when I said discretionary funds. That was a wrong term. We just talking about some pool, a pot of money where if it may come from, it may be a recommendation that comes from this city or from the council, wherever, that there be a set amount of funds that are allowed for travel for persons from the neighborhood to serve on boards, because right now they're having to use it out of their pockets, which is unfair, totally unfair, representing the city. So where can we get those funds from? If it's an amount that's taken from the $2,000 that we get, which is certainly not enough, that's your discretion to do that. But however, there needs to be some funds set aside to assist in this process. That's all we ask.
So it would be different if they wiped out every amount and gave you $2,000. That's not fair.
Right.
But the fact that there are neighborhoods that have $80,000, $70,000, $60,000, they haven't made a transaction in 2 years, 3 years. Where's the fairness in that? And if you're going to do that, we need to change the contract to reflect that. If you're asking us to use some part of the revenue, that's fine. But this is saying the mayor's or the council's discretionary funding.
discretionary funds, take that off the board, I'm sorry.
Okay, well then that's a different
misspoke.
situation. I can understand that, why you asked for that.
Okay.
Ms. Littleton?
Something we would like you all to bear in mind is that the people representing us at News are elected officials. There's no guarantee that we'll have that representation. Right now it currently stands at 2, but the next time they go to be elected, there's potential we have no representation from the city of Birmingham. So I just wanted to make sure the council knew that these are elected positions, that they're representing the city as a whole, and that's where Mr. Debro and the rest of the CAB team that worked on this is coming from in that regard. And the other point in that is that because they're representing the city as a whole, we don't feel that one neighborhood should have to foot the bill for them representing the city as a whole.
I didn't say one neighborhood.
I didn't mean to, I guess, say that you were saying that specifically, but that's just our logic behind it, right? We don't feel as a team that is, if they're representing the city as a whole, that one neighborhood should have to foot the bill to represent that all those representatives. And like Mr. Debro said, there's an opportunity, and it kind of comes down to some of the other discussions about those neighborhood funds, right? So there have been some talks and things as it relates to how the neighborhood funds get spent, but bear in mind that there may be opportunities for one neighborhood may have $50,000. They're not necessarily the neighborhood that's going to be sending the NUSA representative. So it's kind of disenfranchising that neighborhood or those neighborhoods that you say, oh, we're going to pull the money from you all to send this person when they're actually representing the city as a whole. And that's the crux of it. We want the money to come outside of those neighborhood funds. So like Mr. Debro said, it currently stands at $2,000, but that can differ depending on who's administrating the budget. So that's something we want to keep in mind.
I didn't say one neighborhood. That's what I was trying to say. Like, I'm talking about all the neighborhoods that have all that money. Because you know what happens with us? They wipe us clean, literally, and we have to start over. So I need to ask, so is it fair for us to have that same line item when we get on the national board? I'm just trying to understand.
I'd just like to know that we don't have one penny. 7 people. One neighborhood. Nobody in that neighborhood like this person.
Can you move a little closer to the mic? They're having trouble. It's okay.
I thought it was already on. I talked loud enough,
That one's not working, I don't think. I don't think that one's working.
We'll just pass that one around.
Put me all right
That's
now.
me not with that.
I talked loud enough, but we had one member that from one neighborhood, she spent over $1,400 of her money. That's not fair, because people in that neighborhood didn't like her, so they didn't want to pay their neighborhood funds to send her. But the mayor told me, and I'm going to say my staff, that he was going to pay 50%, and we pay 50%, or the person that was going to NUSA will pay 50%. And I just don't think that's fair that we represent the entire neighborhood. We have businesses out there want to help us pay for those expenses. But know what they tell us? You all are elected officials. How in the world am I an elected official through the city of Birmingham, and I can't get Alabama Power to pay my hotel bill? Because they can't do it, because they say I'm an elected official. I was elected to this office. But my thing is, I know we can talk on this all night, but we're not going to get anywhere on it. But my thing, you keep saying about all this money that these neighborhoods have. We had money when Larry Langford came in. I can say it, because we needed $50,000 to put some lights up there in the North Birmingham Park for those little kids to play baseball that night. You know how much money we got from the city? Not one dime. They wouldn't let us spend the money. So Elmer Harris went out there and put all the lights up out there in the park for us. So now on this money situation, if y'all want us to spend all that money on a project, let us know that, if that's what you're after. But we're talking about an individual that's going to NUSA, gonna go in their pocket to spend $1,400, and we throw money away just like we throwing flyers out in the street.
Mr. Coleman, thank you for those comments. I just want to be sure we realize we're trying to get conversation. We're not going to make any changes or make any final rules today. So we just want to have the conversation. But I do want to make you all aware that we have 3 members of our council who are members of the National League of Cities, which is very similar to NUSA. We all are in jeopardy if we don't get reelected, even though we've been appointed to these capacities within NLC. We don't get a chance to serve either, similar to what your requirements would be. But we don't go into each other's discretionary funds in order to make that travel. And so we have to be, we have a budget that we set every year for travel. And so we have to operate within that. So that's where we're coming from. But I know Dr. O'Quinn wants to say something.
Yeah, so I think this is actually there's a very easy solution to this. So putting this language in the CP plan may be a challenge because it would potentially, commit funds. So you may have to put a clause in there, contingent upon funds being available. But every year, the council has to vote on this travel. And if there is a, situation like this that you're talking about, or perhaps, we could work towards this goal of individuals that, are serving in this capacity. We simply just declare this a public purpose and allocate the funds, on as the need arises. I agree with you, that if you're representing the entire city of Birmingham, and I know, some of the specifics of the circumstances that led to this, but, I agree that it shouldn't necessarily be, certainly, it shouldn't be on the individual to bear the burden of representing the city of Birmingham. But I think there's, my point is that I think there's an easy way to handle this, and, handling it on an individual, need, annually. It may be a challenge to include the language in the CP plan because in a way that, is reflective of the flat fact that there's not always adequate resources available. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yes, sir. I don't know, no.
And people are still having it to be included. Then I think we will be happy and we'll be satisfied.
Thank you. That's a suggestion that we will, let's all pencil that in as a possible suggestion. Thank you, Dr. O'Quinn. Mrs. Abbott.
Of how we deal with this, we just, community development just puts the money in their budget for these people because the citizen participation plan is under community development, and then if they get elected, they go. That's an easy thing to do because the administration controls the budget 100% and we don't have any input in it, so they can fix it. Boom, just like that. I know Mr. Chaz is over there smiling, but I can't see his whole face. So
he's over there. All right, thank you. So I think these are good suggestions, and let's take these down, and then we'll come back and, part of this was the discussion for getting this type of feedback. Okay?
But I have one other question about what we're talking about.
Yes.
Back to what we were talking about, which, okay, there are 3 requests here. If an officer is elected to elected to the council, you have to resign. I thought that was already in the program. I sure did it in a hurry. Number 2, a City of Birmingham employee can't serve as an officer. But the third one, it says, nor as a representative to a neighborhood association. So what does that mean? Okay, the second thing, a City of Birmingham employee may not serve as a neighborhood officer nor as a representative to a neighborhood association. Does that mean like a CRR?
That's on your page.
6. It's this item that we haven't gotten past yet. And it says, nor as a representative to a neighborhood association. And then it says, i.e. NUSA.
That's that last paragraph under item 2, neighborhood association, on page 6.
Okay, answer that there, Ms.
It's just the nor as a representative part of the sentence because I don't understand what it means.
Go ahead, Dr. Glenn.
Yeah, so I think my interpretation of that is that a city employee may not serve as a neighborhood officer nor as a representative elected to a board like NUSA.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so maybe nor as a representative of a neighborhood association instead of to a neighborhood association, because the only representative to a neighborhood association, I guess, would be a CRR.
So of, or as a representative of a neighborhood association. Okay, we'll go back and wordsmith that, but I think we're clear on what the questions are behind that. Are you all? Okay. So let's go to the next item on page 7. And this was, you had already started discussion with this. Questions about vacancy at this point. And there were some questions regarding this particular section. Councilors, did you have anything that you wanted to relate back to the group? That's that second paragraph on page 7. Any questions about that? Vacancy announcements. Yes, Madam Pro Tem. You gotta go. Okay, sorry. Council Pro Tem has to leave us. Okay. None with those. We'll go on to the next one then. Page, I believe it's page 9. Have anything about community meeting model?
Where on page 9?
Page 9, all meetings of the neighborhood associations and committee shall be open to the public. Question, some of the questions that evolved from the council was one, should the meeting requirements be consistent with the Alabama Open Meetings Act, where we have to follow certain guidelines regarding this act as to how we conduct meetings, frequency of the meetings, when we call for the meetings. Was there anything you were putting in there that relates to that? You don't.
We don't have the same copy you have.
Oh, yes, okay. Lois, could you pass out those?
Because I guess the reading is all meetings of all neighborhood associations and its committees shall be open to the public.
When you see it says Jeff's name, that means we got some questions. Okay. When it says Jeff, because me and Jeff have questions he received.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
You have to know without
I guess I'm trying to understand what the question is, because we said that all meetings of the neighborhood association and its committees shall be open to the public.
Okay, and the neighborhood association may invite non-residents to the neighborhood to participate and cooperate with the neighborhood association and advisory group. These non-residents include the mayor, the city council, and city officials, ministers, educators. So you're just saying you will allow those speakers to come to your meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ms. Williams, was there any other comments about this particular item? Oh, she's back there talking right now. All right. We'll just go on next. If there are no other questions with you all other than that, there was one regarding just the flow of the meetings, how you conduct the meetings. Did you want to write any strength into that?
That up, we are following the state law as it relates to this. All our meetings are published. We announce them at our meetings. They're published by the city. Councilors send out on the dais. They talk about the neighborhood meetings. All that information is public.
Okay.
The community development, they do that as well.
Perfect. Okay. Very
They
good.
also publish on Facebook and next door.
Thank you. All right. The next one with the boundary changes. I know that's our page 9. It may be your page 10, but it's under the heading boundary changes. Now, this was a whole red section, so just give us more information about what you wanted to do here when it comes to about boundary changes. Looks like a red line.
Have any changes to we didn't change anything in the current boundary changes.
They didn't change the other
We didn't change
paragraph
anything whatsoever.
either.
I think this must have been an internal question
Okay.
that we generated.
Okay. So let me just ask some of the questions that I have here. It's written so small. So when it comes to boundary changes, do you use GIS mapping? What do you use as a source for those neighborhood boundaries?
Counselor, yes, the GIS system does have the neighborhood boundary as an overlay on the GIS system. Ms. Williams can probably speak to that a little bit more, but yes, that on the GIS system, there's an overlay that each one of us can actually pull up our neighborhood boundaries. It's also available on their website as well, where they actually have the maps as well. So that is used. So we are following
Perfect.
all city protocol as well.
And it's just a question, because not to say you're doing something wrong, but just for some of our understanding, because I do know that one of my neighborhoods, they found out that a member was living in a neighborhood that was never even that neighborhood. It was always supposed to have been the other neighborhood. But there was a misunderstanding as if the redistricting process had affected that, which it had not. So just want to know, do you need anything like that in the CP plan, or is it already addressed when it comes to those boundaries?
It's already addressed, and I can tell you personally, depending on how your neighborhood is split up, that happens a lot. People don't realize they're in the wrong neighborhood meetings, and they come to find out months, days, weeks later that they get directed to the right neighborhood association.
I did that. Went to the wrong neighborhood for a few weeks before I realized that wasn't my neighborhood. They finally told me to go away.
And Madam President, just for clarification, if you have that problem, the states clearly how to handle it. I just went through that.
Perfect.
Went through that now.
Okay, thank you. And I do remember we did have a group to come before a council meeting that was requesting, is it Pine Knoll Vista, or where they had a question, and I don't know if the plan was precipitating their question to the council or how that was handled, or do you feel that's specified well enough in here?
Because I represent Pine Knoll Vista, I can tell you that there's still some going back and forth. There were some attempts at a vote to annex a couple of homes, because literally it's one street, and you have 3 homes that are technically in one neighborhood, and you might have 3 or 4 in the other neighborhood. And those 3 or 4 wanted to move into the neighborhood of their choosing. There were some vote attempts that occurred. That process played out as it should, as stated in the CP plan, but that vote from those neighborhood officers didn't go through, because residents have to vote to approve people leaving and people coming in. So that's totally left up to the neighborhoods to make that determination. But there still may be some active conversations about that. So that I imagine Councilor Moore does know a little bit more about about that currently.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam
Any-
President?
Yes.
Yeah, when I was president of Glen Iris, we had one of those situations, and it was because the citizens who live near a problem location were in the wrong neighborhood. They weren't in the, they wanted to go to the neighborhood association across the street from their house to complain about the noise and all the drug problems in the park, but the park was in another neighborhood. But everybody agreed, and it worked out just fine, and they moved the boundary, and so it was a friendly thing because, 5 Point South agreed that really they didn't feel like those people belonged to them anyway. But it works. It works when it's kind of logical.
Lastly, I can get you all the update on that particular situation if that's what you're asking for.
Thank you. The next one we had comments on, I don't know if you want to go through anything else, but leading up to this was under it's our page 17. It's under bilingual and also contingency and local option activities. And it's under the heading
17.
It's our page 17, yes. Bilingual. Okay, thank you. There were just some comments about maybe this section just needed some wordsmithing because it seemed a little different than what I think you were trying to accomplish. Of course, we know that we do have a growing bilingual community, especially in some of the neighborhoods, thinking of like Inner Ridge and up near Tuggle, places like that. And so the question was, did we need to change some of that wording? And just go with me on this. Since the city of Birmingham does have a growing number of low and moderate income, non-English speaking residents or blighted neighborhoods of the same bilingual requirements, that they are applicable at this time. This is almost like we were being negative versus.
Madam.
Yeah,
Madam.
and this was the original language. We did not change that, so whatever adjustment you want to make in that, I think would be fine.
And
Madam President.
y'all discussed that. Chief has a question.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the attorney because we could get into some legal ramifications with that particular wording.
Go ahead if you'll give us your name, attorney. Thank you.
Beverly Scruggs for the Office of the City Attorney. There were some changes made to the standards in 2016 that require affirmative steps on the part of the city to determine the actual percentage or number of non-English speaking persons. And so there has to be more than just a statement that we don't have to do anything. There has to be, some research review of the census results to determine the non-English speaking persons and whether or not we've got a sufficient amount that requires us to take another step. So I think the language needs to be put in there, and there is sample language that's provided by ADECA and by HUD that would comply with that. That essentially says that we will, do that review and we will conduct the 4-step analysis that has to be conducted to determine whether or not we need to take additional action. So I think that we've got to put that in there, and that will cover us so that we can then in turn continue to assess it based on that language. And if the numbers grow to a point where it requires us to make services available like translation or the availability of documents in certain languages, then we'll be able to do that based on that language that we've included.
And we certainly have no problems with that. It was just that, and if there's any legal problems or ramifications, just submitting that to us to include in the plan, we would welcome that. But this is our first hearing that, I think.
Okay. So can you make note of that? And then of course, we're going to pass this to the OCA for their guidance legally on this. Right. So we can make note and be sure that you assist us or assist with getting that into the plan as it needs to be.
Yes, we'll say that any of the legal language that we need to include, if we could receive a copy of that, we certainly can include it. We have no problems whatsoever.
I'd be glad to provide that.
Thank you. And Councilor Williams has a question while you're at the podium.
Yeah, while you're here, this is kind of going back to some earlier conversation that we had. Do you not think it's appropriate that members of this that accept public funding for travel not file a statement of economic interest with the Alabama Ethics Commission?
It's kind of a complicated situation with advisory boards that receive public or municipal funds. We don't want to get into a situation where we are in non-compliance with any area of the law. With that being said, these are advisory board members with no true discretionary power. They don't have the power to act on behalf of the council. They don't have the power to direct funds. They simply have the capacity to convey information and maintain that two-way channel so that the council and the other officials of the city have access to, grassroots information of the needs and what's going on in the city. So I think it's important to not twist it or misconstrue it to the point where we're trying to shift control of municipal funds, because we don't have the legal authority to do that. The council has the ability to allocate funds, but they must ensure in their analysis of every individual situation that there's a public purpose for those funds. So I don't think that we've got the capacity to be able to say that we're just going to do this or we're going to do this in a general blanket sort of way. I think that there has to be this analysis of this individual situation as it relates to this person and their travel and where they're going and what it's for, and that's a determination that you'll make, as one of the council members said earlier, on a case-by-case basis. I don't think we're able to include language in the CPP plan that would, just say that the council is going to pay something without going through that analysis and that process.
Counselor, get your answer. You've agreed to that?
Essentially, we just want to see it. Like Mr. Devereaux said, we just want to see whatever it is so that we can tell everybody that we notice the neighborhood and the citizens. Get it in there so it meets legal requirements, obviously. We don't want to violate the law.
Great. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next was on, go back to see, contingency options. Yes, Councilor Abbott.
Yeah, I think the next one's number 13, and there's just a question whether it's even needed anymore. Because the neighborhoods are spending city funds out of the city budget, not CDBG money. So it seems to me that 13, I didn't turn this in, but it seems to me 13 can just be
taken out,
removed completely.
Understand Councilor's comment. That's our page 17.
Our page 17.
Yes.
It's number 13. It's
yes.
Yeah, contingency funds and.
Mr. Devereaux, Mr. Hurd.
And while Mr. Devereaux reads over that, I can tell you why there's pause and hesitation, and it's kind of what Mr. Devereaux spoke to, is how community development is allocating funds using portions of our CP plan. We had some concerns around how that process was working, so I necessarily saying we don't disagree, we just have a concern as it relates to how the CAB and the citizens are actually being involved truly in that process. That's a concern around the hood.
Council's not even involved in that process.
Is HUD involved in the neighborhood association projects? No, they can't be, because we don't use HUD's money. We use money out of the general fund now. We used to use CDBG money back when it was formulated. That was the reason for the program's creation, but that quit a long time ago.
Yeah, we got tapped on the hand from HUD when we used CDBG funds on the local level for the actual CP plan, and they said that was an not an allowable use. So that was
why we lost our neighborhood flyers too.
Yes.
So it is confusing though, because the CP plan is part of the consolidated plan for the city of Birmingham. So every year when we, submit our required documents for HUD CDBG dollars, and really, in my opinion, the only legal context for the CP plan is through our community development block grant program. So, this document is not part of city code. This is the reason this thing exists is because of CDBG. So I would think that HUD would have something to say if we kind of remove them from,
How would they know?
Yeah, anyway, it's complicated. That's all the only thing I'm trying to say.
And
Yes.
we would love to discuss that further, because actually on the community development website, there's what they call a HUD CPP, which is pretty much the HUD consolidated plan, which has bits and pieces of our CP plan in it that is submitted to the federal government. But we would love to have that discussion.
So this particular item, then, we're going to take it more to community development, and we'll also let our attorneys help us with how this, because it seems to still be the question of the utilization of those funds, or what's the source of those funds, and how we use the CPP plan. I had to call it CPP plan, but the CPP as a resource for how we distribute those funds. Does that make sense when it comes time to use those CBDG dollars? Okay. So this one we'll put on the table. We'll come back and we want more clarification. Is that agreeable? Yes.
And just bear in mind, this was not a change. This was the original, what was in there originally.
Yes. All right. The next one on page 18, and we just have a few more. We'll be finished in a few minutes. The questions we have, questions that came to us as a council as far as procedures, the election process, and procedures for election for neighborhood officers, and those qualifications. And so I know there's been some questions about whether there's a valid Alabama license that needs to be given, or, what is the source of determining the validity of that person to meet qualifications. So just wanted to talk with you about processing through those changes or what those requirements are. What do you see those to be? Do you see any changes that need to be put forth for that?
We have not proposed any changes. We were continuing what we had. Now, in our last plan, the next year, but right now we were proposing that it would stay as it is right now.
What I'm going to provide you with is, we did have some suggestions of just how that would be outlined that we just wanted you to consider, and I'm going to pass that along to you all later as part of just the summary of what we're talking about today, and just to kind of, I'm going to say tighten that up, but to clarify it more, so that anyone that walks in and wants to, become a candidate for that, it's clear as mud as what direction they have to take, and then that way we don't have to come back asking the council to referee certain situations or things like that. Maybe it still happen, but may not.
Can I add to that, and to where we're going with that? I would like for, when you disseminate, for us to add that the neighborhood officer must reside in the house and may not own a rental home. Because I have a lot of people that own rental homes that are trying to come to neighborhood meetings, and they are articulating that they own a house in the neighborhood, but the only asterisk is they don't live in that house that they own. And they tend to be the disruptful folks that are making everyone else in the neighborhood upset. So if there's a way to demise if they actually live in that residence, because you could have a utility bill or or whatever saying that address because you own it, right? So I mean, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but it's a current problem that I'm seeing is people that own Airbnbs coming to meetings and because they own the house.
Helping to influence the meeting.
So,
Yes, sir.
Councilor Williams' point, you have to actually reside 120 days prior to the declaration of candidacy form. So they, just because you own the house, if you're not actively living in it, they wouldn't be allowed to run. But there is an avenue in the CP plan currently, no changes made by us, that allows people in the community, such as businesses or property owners, to participate in the process of a neighborhood, but they cannot currently run as a neighborhood officer unless they've resided in that particular location that they put on the declaration of the candidacy form 120 days prior to that declaration.
Well, I understand that, but that's not happening.
Is how do you verify the 120 days?
Right.
Madam President.
There's no way to verify outside of that form.
We would welcome your suggestions, and we would review those and incorporate those where we can.
There's also...
Madam President.
Yes, ma'am. Zabit.
These changes that are on this procedures for regular elections, this is my suggestion. And the reason is because of what happened in the Glen Iris neighborhood, which has been very controversial. So, being a longtime neighborhood person and wanting it to work right, the changes that I made were just really a little wordsmithing, but when you want to run for office, you need to prove that you live in the neighborhood. You can't just be living with your boyfriend or whatever, or girlfriend. You need to live there, and you have to prove you live there. So if you didn't change your driver's license or your state ID if you don't have a driver's license, and the utility bills are not in your name, you know, the hunting and fishing, the only reason I put those things on there is because I think those are proofs that are used to vote for president and all the other votes that we, you know, the real elections. And I only put that on there because that's what they do. But it seems to me that before you get your name on the ballot, you need to prove you lived in the neighborhood. You don't need to just come by and say, hey, I want to run for president. Yeah, I live here. And then somebody says, well, great, I'm glad you live here. We'll put you on the ballot. We need to have a process where you have to prove it to even get your name on the ballot. And then when you come back to vote, you have to prove it again that you're still who you said you were. So that's the only reason for this. And if we don't want the utility bills and the hunting and fishing license, I think U.S. passport's a pretty good thing. If you've got your home address on your U.S. passport, that ought to be valid.
Maybe if you're challenged, you have to show two or something.
You have to show, well, I mean, they have to show it to the people who are controlling whose names get on the ballot. You have to provide it. So that was the only reason for this, was because we had a problem. And I could see that it was a legitimate problem. You know, you really ought to prove you live in a neighborhood before you ever are put on the ballot.
And we do agree with that. We'd love to see the recommendations. Another thing that we've actually discussed as a CAB is the process changes depending on whether you declare or you are nominated from an existing vacant position. So if you're doing the declaration, you have to meet the 120-day requirement. You have to attend 4 meetings. The candidacy form also pretty much states that in the event that you put invalid information in on this candidacy form, so if you lie about your address and you sign it, just like some government websites that tell you this is considered official documentation, so if that can be proven invalid, that immediately disqualifies the person. That was the actual process that occurred with Glen Iris. There were some issues with that. As far as
that's in here.
Yes, ma'am. It's in there with no changes whatsoever from us. It's already in there. And as it relates to the forms of identification, that was done, I imagine, to follow the state recommendations, because we only changed this on the odd years, and it hasn't been changed in a while. So the state of Alabama could say next month that they want to add any number of things. That's what the et cetera covers, so that we don't have to come back every year and try to update it. So we try to list out what people typically expect as it relates to voting, and And then the et cetera covers anything the state might change, so we don't have to come back and change that specific area every time they update it.
Well, and the language could be changed to just simply say the same proofs of identification that are allowed in federal elections or state elections will be followed in the CP plan. I just wanted people to have to know what the requirements were, so that there would be no controversy. There'd be, you either provide it or you don't. You either provide or you don't get on the ballot. So then they're not all that angst. So that was the only reason for these changes. And if y'all don't, I mean, if nobody likes them, that's fine. I just wanted to avoid controversy, because knowing what the requirements are, you can't say, well, I didn't know if it's in the CP plan.
And
let me say this. One thing, we talked about that 120 days, which is might not be, but we talked about full meetings that you had to attend. And when you attend those 4 meetings, it means that you're telling us that the minutes and the sign-in sheet should reflect to that. So
that makes sense.
We just had a mess over that, but I'm hoping we can get it straightened out.
But if an apartment building owner or a rental owner comes to the meeting, they put the address of their property they own. They don't put their address in Vestavia. They put the address, and so see, they could say, well, yeah, I live in my rental house. Well, no, you don't. You live in Vestavia. So, you know, to me, you have to show the driver's license, the, you know, passport, the real official things, your tax return. I mean, I don't care, but, you know, prove that you actually live there. I mean, the guy next door probably knows you don't live there, but they're not involved with elections. And I just would like for it to be spelled out, so we, you know, let's avoid all the controversy we possibly can avoid instead of inviting it, because the 4 meetings is still here, the 120 days, all that is still here. It's just that little bit of clarification. You have to provide your proof when you ask to be put on the ballot.
And Madam President, let me say that it seems as though there are some recommendations coming from the council. We are more than happy to receive those. We just need to receive them, and we can work through that and include them in the document. We are open to that.
Perfect.
So we welcome that.
Thank you. And so I can pass that document on to you, because we do have a red line and we've got some comments, so I'll be sure to do that. And the only other thing I want you to think about on page 19, adding some of those same information when it comes to write-in candidate. Of course, they should meet the same requirements as a regular candidate. I think you all are good with that. Okay. And the next item, we only have 2 more, but we just had questions. When it comes to petitioners, and when there is an absentee balloting, just wondered, did you need to shore that up a little bit? Or here's a question: who verifies and certifies the petitioners? Is that done within the neighborhood, or is it done with community resources? Yes.
What we have started doing is, once we did receive the petition ballots, we have to verify through Community Resource Services and ask each of those people that have signed a petition ballot to give us a verifiable ID. So we require them to provide ID, because that's the only way that we can verify that they live in the property. So it's just time consuming, and just trying to make sure people don't go and try to vote on multiple ballots. And we just try to keep a separate list of all that. So, and also just the process of petition balloting, explaining to all the neighborhoods how it works, because we do have people who don't understand the process and think because I do a petition, nobody else can write in and that sort of thing. And get frustrated and want to contest the election. So we try to educate the neighborhood on that. So we do verify the ID on our end. I don't know in the past how it was done, but that's what I do. I just ask for ID. So, Mr. Coleman, y'all might have done something different in the past. I'm not sure, but I ask for ID verification. Okay.
Thank you. And the display of the copy of the maps, when you have your, again, you stated earlier already, you're using the GIS mapping and those neighborhood maps that we have from GIS. Yes.
So I want to say too, that's in terms of the CP plan, a lot of this language is from pre-computer, pre-technology. So as long as we have it available on our computers, because even the request for neighborhood officers to share their phone number and address, right now, the plan doesn't say phone number, email, that sort of thing. So that's a technology thing, I think, and I don't know if that's something y'all want to address, because we do have our computers at all of the election sites, so we can verify those addresses. So that was the reason that some people were having issues, because now we have the computers and weren't relying on those maps that may make it look like you're in a neighborhood, but you're across the street from a neighborhood. So I think maybe possibly looking at making that addition for us, just to help us, allowing the computers to serve as that purpose, because we can put in the address and it gives you the exact neighborhood, the exact community, as opposed to looking at that paper map and not being able to make that determination.
Thank you. So we'll be sure to go back and just kind of highlight that. And the last item is in regards to when you have a contested ballot, or you have a contested result. And I know we've used referees in the past, or you've had a referee. And so the question is, has the referee ever been asked to volunteer or volunteered additional guidelines, been asked to or volunteered additional procedures and or guidelines when it comes to handling the contest?
So normally, because they are volunteering, we have not asked them to, as long as I've served, we have not asked them to go back and make additional changes to the plan, but that is something that the committee can recommend, and we can talk to the mayor's office to see how we can facilitate that, because this is a voluntary position. We have talked to the CAB Executive Committee this last term about the attorney possibly looking at the plan, making adjustments to it for us, but we'd have to, I don't know how that affects his non-bias and his participation in serving on the plan. So, I mean, that's something we've talked about in the past, but I just don't know how we would accommodate that request, because I'm pretty sure that if we get into it, they probably want to be paid for it, because that's a little bit more difficult. But I can definitely ask and see what that looks like, and to see if we can get some recommendations that we might be able to refer back to OCA or something like that. But we did talk about it with CAB Executive Committee before.
Thank you. Councilors, any other items that you just want to bring up for discussion, or we can send those to the committee? Is that okay?
I will say something.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys being here, and it might be nice to have, outside of talking about this mundane document, it might be nice to make this more of a regular thing. So I appreciate y'all's being here. I think that there's a lot more interesting things that we can talk about in terms of solutions that are actually problems in our neighborhood than this red line document. But it's nice to have y'all here, nonetheless.
And before he moves for adjournment,
because I'm about
I want to, because he's chomping at the bit. Go ahead, but I want to hear from you all. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to just throw something more general out there. And, at the risk of offending folks, I'm just going to say this. But anyway, so one of the, issues that I think a lot of folks kind of complain about is, the lack of participation, and there's really, 5 people in a meeting representative of an entire neighborhood. So part of the reason, so to me, language is incredibly important. And there's a big difference between using one word versus another. It can completely change an interpretation. So one of the things that I've thought about over the years is that, the context of the CP plan is that we have a neighborhood association, and that every resident of the neighborhood who meets the qualifications is by default, a member of the association and has voting rights and so on and so forth. And by having that type of frame, by using that framing, when you have, even 20 people who are representing 1,200 households, that to some folks, when that's an issue, that it doesn't seem representative that such a small group kind of speaks for an entire neighborhood. Now, I know it's complicated, but one of the things that I've thought about is, rather than calling them neighborhood associations, one of the ideas that I've kind of turned over is, why don't we have, the president, vice president, secretary be a resident council? And, the recommendation, nothing would really change. You could still conduct your meetings. Folks could come to a meeting and, guide the resident council in terms of, recommendations and everything. But it seems like I just want to throw that idea out there, but that based on what we observe, it seems to me that it might be more appropriate than to call it a council versus an association. Because again, the expectations created by using that language, association, when you have a very small contingent of the association participating, the complaint is that's not actually representative. Just throwing it out there.
I think that's fair, just to throw it out there. Go ahead.
I would say, Councilor Williams, we appreciate that statement that you made, because that's something this executive team is having these conversations with the council. To Councilor O'Quinn, one of the things that we as neighborhood officers and even as CAB representatives have been having to deal with is the fact that we don't have the opportunity to really reach our neighborhood association. We don't want to disenfranchise necessarily, or make it appear that we're disenfranchising anybody from participating in a neighborhood association. So we would just like the city's assistance in reaching our neighborhood a little bit better, because we're not allowed to mail out anything with our neighborhood funds. So there are some things that we would love the opportunity to be able to reach more people, so that we can make that attendance look the way you would like it to look, in the way that we would like it to look. But right now we're struggling to get that done because of the framework that has been put in place by the law department as it relates to the things that we can spend our neighborhood funds on. So we would love to have a packed room with 1,000. If we have 1,400, we want all 1,400 there if we can get them there. Obviously, there's some willingness to participate is always involved in that process, but we love to reach them. Possibly can.
Madam President.
Yes.
Because I don't want to end the meeting without saying that we hold all public funds in the same light. If it's a neighborhood fund, if it's a council discretionary fund, or if it's any department fund, it goes through the same process. We always check all of our boxes to make sure it's legal and proper before anything is approved or going out the door. Just wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Yes, sir.
And I didn't mean to disparage, but what we've heard from our neighborhood is that we get a mailer from the city of Birmingham, 2 or 3 times a month, yet our neighborhood association can't give us nothing. Why can't we get a newsletter from our neighborhood association? Well, we've been told that we cannot do that. So that's the issue we're facing.
I've heard that.
One word on
got an email about that.
through.
Yes, go ahead.
Like Councilor O'Quinn, I know some neighborhoods might have 5 to 10 people, but we used to have a mail out. I know Ms. Abbott could remember we had a mail out go out. If it didn't go out but once a month, every 3 months, we will appreciate it. That's how people got to come to the neighborhood meeting. And in my neighborhood, the people done got old, and they don't mind coming, but they don't know. They can't remember. But my thing is, I just want to tell you guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate you letting us get an opportunity. But we want to learn how to work together. And I think once we learn that, how to work together, will be a better CP plan or counselor. Now, when you had this counselor, are you going to have a vice president, secretary, and a president? Or just going to have we're all three council people? Well,
That'll confuse the stew out. If we call it a council, first of all, it sounds like a housing community because they have resident councils. And then you'll talk about the council, and they won't know which council you're talking about, and all it'll be is a big mess. So if we're going to choose a new name, let's choose one nobody else uses.
Yeah.
Question, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
With the little word changes that you've got to do for this one, we need to get this back ASAP. Time.
We will have, our deputy director will email the document that I was talking from that had the suggested changes, and I've been taking notes, so we're going to add the notes for the conversation that we had, and we'll get that back to you. Could you give us at least a week, because we have some other things going on within the council right now that we're looking at, but if you could give us a week, and we'll get that back to you through email, okay? Promise that. And yes, sir. Hold on one second, Mr. Cole. Deputy Director.
Only thing I was going to say, Madam President, is that I can take the additional comments and fractions on the document that you currently have.
Yes.
However, I did make a commitment to send it up to OCA before you brought it back. So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so if you'll know, that adds some of the timeline to that, if that's okay. Okay. And Councilor Tate, did you want to end this out? Okay, great. I do want to echo and thank you all for this opportunity. I think it went very well. I'm very pleased with the communication, the conversation we had back and forth. I do want you all to feel that this is a working document between both entities and within the group. And I know the councilors are very committed, and I know that you are as well, and to making this a good resource tool so that for even some of the issues that we've had recently, that again, if it's written, then I believe in following the policy, and I let the policy work for me. So we want to be sure we have good policies, right? So thank you all. Counselor?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.